How do living organisms such as humans, animals, and bacteria utilize nutrients for energy? All living organisms must have energy in order to do anything from daily activities to instinctual bodily functions such as breathing. They obtain this energy by converting nutrients like carbohydrates, proteins, and fats into energy. This process is called cellular respiration. Cellular respiration is a vital process for living organisms because it fends for the smallest and fundamental unit of a living organism, a cell. Though blood from inhalation carries oxygen to most cells, cellular respiration allows oxygen access to the cell and also discards the cell's waste, carbon dioxide, when exhaling. It surely takes a village to raise a child.
There are two types of cellular respiration, aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration. Aerobic respiration requires oxygen and produces 38 adenosine triphosphate molecules, also known as ATP molecules, energy suppliers, while anaerobic respiration does not require oxygen and produces only 2 ATP molecules. Evidently, anaerobic respiration, also known as fermentation, is a lot less efficient and therefore is a backup process used by some living organisms when there is not sufficient oxygen. Aerobic respiration and anaerobic respiration processes both begin by breaking down a glucose molecule into 2 pyruvate or pyruvic acid molecules. This step is known as glycolysis and it takes place in the cytoplasm. The process of glycolysis requires 2 ATP to break down the glucose molecule, or in this case rhesus pieces, into 2 pyruvic acid molecules, oranges in here. As you can see, those are the 2 ATPs required. And in return, it outputs 4 ATP, resulting in a production of 2 ATP for the organism to store. During this time, nicotinamide adenine dinucleotide, or NAD+, connects with higher energy electrons, and in this case represented by glitter, becomes NADH, a more energetic molecule that helps produce additional ATP molecules. The next step of aerobic respiration is the Krebs cycle, or the citric acid cycle. Here, the 2 molecules of pyruvate enter the mitochondrial matrix, pyruvate being the oranges, and break down into carbon dioxide, symbolized by the green feather. For cells that do not have the mitochondria or are single cell, the Krebs cycle occurs in the cytoplasm. During this time, ADP molecules, a lower energy form of ATP, gain a phosphate group to form ATP molecules. The ATP is formed for more energy, and the carbon dioxide is present for the living organism to discard, so it leaves the cell. In this process, energy is used to help NAD+ and flavin adenine dinucleotide, or FAD, become higher energy compounds, which are important for the next stage, NADH and FADH2. The mitochondria is the powerhouse of a cell that generates energy. As it is a cell organelle, it is located in the cytoplasm. Let's take a closer look at the mitochondria. The parts of the mitochondria include the outer membrane, and the intermembrane space, which is this red part around the matrix here. The outer membrane of the mitochondria contains the transport proteins, represented by the green lace, necessary for transporting the pyruvate molecules, such as the oranges from before, into the mitochondria. While the intermembrane space is a space for the protons or hydrogen ions we'll see in step 3 for them to gather, enter, and exit the matrix, the matrix, which is found in the center and is the largest part of the mitochondria, which was represented by tissue paper before in the box, which was mitochondria, is used in the Krebs cycle as it has the specific enzymes and pH level needed to break down nutrients and synthesize ATP. The third step of aerobic respiration is the electron transport chain. The electron transport chain is a series of transport proteins and electron carriers across the inner mitochondrial membrane, represented here by the blue outline around the matrix and the mitochondria. Let us take a look at what is going on. Over here, this blue lace represents the inner mitochondrial membrane of the mitochondria, while the yellow blobs represent the transport proteins and the electron carriers. This step involves NADH and FADH2 to release their high energy electrons, the glitter, as well as the hydrogen ion that they were attached to. This allows for energy to be released and in turn used to pump the hydrogen ions against its concentration gradient from low concentration to high concentration. They move from the matrix to the electron transport chains in the inner mitochondrial membrane and into the intermembrane space of the mitochondria. Any lower energy electrons combine with an H and an O2 oxygen to make water, or this blue thing right here. Then some of the hydrogen ions move through the ATP synthase, which is represented by the pink lace, and return to the mitochondrial matrix down its concentration gradient from high concentration to low concentration. While an ion moves through the synthase, it is adding energy and is propelling the conversion of ADP with another phosphate group to become ATP. This sub-process is known as ATP production and produces 36 ATP molecules. Fermentation, also known as anaerobic respiration, is the process of producing ATP in the absence of oxygen. Due to the lack of oxygen, not many ATP molecules can be produced, making this process much less efficient when compared to aerobic respiration. In this process, NADH releases energy to become NAD+ in preparation for step 1 glycolysis. The broken down glucose into pyruvate or oranges then turn into either alcohol and carbon dioxide, or the feather for alcohol fermentation, or lactic acid in lactic acid fermentation. Anaerobic respiration is much faster and easier to do with fewer steps, but it is significantly less efficient and has to be repeated several times to achieve sufficient energy. However, for some microorganisms and yeast, this is the only type of respiration attainable.
In summary, there are 3 steps for aerobic respiration: glycolysis, the Krebs cycle, and finally the electron transport chain. Aerobic respiration converts the inputs of glucose and oxygen into the outputs of carbon dioxide, water, and ATP energy, which is why nutrients and oxygen are necessary for it to happen. On the other hand, fermentation begins with glucose and the 2 pyruvate molecules turn into lactic acid or alcoholic acid. Cellular respiration, whether it's aerobic or anaerobic respiration, is vital for living organisms to have the energy or ATP to carry through with their daily processes.